you censorious thug.
I don't think I'm exaggerating when I call the anti-segregation, pro-free speech, pro-mobility rights freedom convoy from last February the single largest cohesive human rights demonstration in modern Canadian history. Tens of thousands of Canadians lined the highways and overpasses across this country as a convoy led by truckers, but joined by thousands of normal people headed to our nation's capital to protest the endless COVID restrictions on our lives. And when Justin Trudeau told the truckers they had to get a vaccine to cross the border after they had already been working for 2 years without interruption to keep the economy going, they said enough was enough. It was the breaking point, and Canadians joined the truckers. And immediately upon arrival in the nation's capital, those truckers found themselves in real legal jeopardy. So they needed great legal help. And along came my show guest today, who stepped up to thread the legal needle to protect the rights and interests of the peaceful protesters in Ottawa from a government. Keith, thanks so much for coming on the show. I have so many questions for you. And I think because we're sort of a year out of the convoy, I think maybe we can walk back a little. I'm curious how a lawyer in Alberta ends up being trucker lawyer in Ottawa. How did you get involved in the convoy itself?
Well, sometimes the phone rings and you answer it. It was actually a Zoom call. It was not quite 1 year ago today. It was on February 1st. And I had a team meeting with my Peckford lawyers, because as you know, I counsel for former Premier Peckford on the travel mandate charter challenge. And there was a bunch of more names in the waiting room than I expected. And there was an assembly of lawyers from the Justice Centre that had been contacted that morning from the truckers in Ottawa with a request for help with legal matters. And the Justice Centre determined that they were going to send a team of 5 lawyers to Ottawa the next morning. And they asked me if I would lead that team, being a senior lawyer. And I agreed. So that's how I found myself in Ottawa on February 2nd for 19 days on the ground at the side of Tamara Leach and Chris Barber and other members of the Freedom Board, and advising them and helping them negotiate their agreement with the city and deal with the police and the GoFundMe and the donations and everything else, the class action lawsuit, the injunctions, the Attorney General orders, the Emergency Act proclamations, and so on.
Now, how did you end up with Eva at your side? Because Eva Chipiuk, she has been a very outspoken face of the legal team of the convoy, and she was the one who examined Justin Trudeau at the Public Order Commission. So I guess, how do you formulate a team to walk into Ottawa to try to untangle this mess that's unfolding in front of you?
Well, I've known Eva for 15 or more years. So my background is representing landowners, farmers, ranchers, and other landowners in Alberta, and disputes with energy companies, utility companies, and that sort of work where you have a group client where you're representing, 20, 30 farms on a pipeline route or something. And Eva also, that's her background. So we'd met numerous times where we were in hearings over large pipeline projects or power line projects. So we practiced the same kind of law where we're in these David and Goliath type battles. And she was the one who reached out to me in the fall of 2021 and asked me if I would be willing to take on the Peckford case for as a contract lawyer to the Justice Centre. So that's how Eva and I, so we've known one another off and on throughout the years, had a lot of cases where we're on the same side of, and so on. Both her and I do a lot of public speaking to the legal profession. So her and I would often be at legal conferences speaking on different contemporary legal topics. But then the Justice Centre themselves that morning of February 1st had assembled a team, and they amongst themselves, they told me, had decided that, with myself being a senior lawyer, 27 years at the bar, they asked if I would lead them. So I thought, well, that's helpful. They've already decided amongst themselves that how they wanted the team to function. So that's how it came about. And when I arrived, the first thing I noticed when we got downtown to the hotel was that we drove downtown to the hotel, because I had this image from the legacy media that we'd get stopped 8 or 10 blocks out. And then I was psychologically prepared for a long walk to get to the hotel. And we pulled up right to the front door, just like you can today. And that was consistent throughout. Anyway, so that was the first sort of, wow, this is weird. And also going past all the trucks and and the people and the protesters and the signs and the encampments was my eyes were pretty wide. But the other thing that was really notable, Sheila, was when I went into the lobby of the hotel, the supplies were stacked everywhere, like too high against the wall, because so many Canadians were just pouring in supplies. It was remarkable. And I could also, you could cut the tension. It had this feel of, I imagined what it might have been like, say, during the Yugoslavian war, when the enemy had advanced significantly and all the civilians were like holed up in this hotel and they were surrounded. It had that kind of super high tension to it. And we went up to a hotel room where the key leaders were there, the key original convoy leaders and road captains and so on, Tamara Leach, Chris Barber, Sean Tyson and others, Miranda Gracer. And I had to work very quickly to understand who they were and to earn their trust. None of us had met one another before. So it was really interesting. And it wasn't until the next day that I discovered there was all these other groups that were there, and some had great intentions and others not so much. So it was a sorting at first. So it's just complete government propaganda now. It's paid government media, full stop. And I sense they're trying to fight back a little bit, because I think they realize they've drank the poison and they've done a deal with the devil. But I think it's too late. And it's only a matter of time before I think we see them hopefully fade away, or we're going to see more money go in from our tax dollars, and we're going to get even more extreme propaganda. And Rosemary Barton is going to up her enthusiasm level when she talks about Dear Justin, you know?
You know, it's funny because they've nuked their credibility.
Yes.
But now they're in a position where they will not ever receive the market correction they so rightly deserve for nuking their credibility from the public, who will not buy their product anymore or watch them, because it doesn't matter. Because as long as they're saying the things that are friendly to the government will continue to bail them out. So it's just this hideous feedback loop where the only people who really lose out are the Canadian public, who are forced to pay for this unwatchable batch of lies. Now, I could talk about how terrible the mainstream media is forever. However, as long as they remain terrible, I will have job security for as long as I want it. But I wanted to talk to you about the Public Order Emergency Commission, because the commission has examined everything insofar as they've the evidence before them, I should say. And it sounds like they've made their decision, and they are passing the decision on to the federal government to look at before everybody else, which I think is probably normal practice. I think the government usually gets no, it's not. Okay, correct me on that.
Here's the thing. Yeah, okay, sure.
Please.
Because often when an inquiry is set, they do it from a blank piece of paper. In other words, there's no statutory requirement. There's no direction from the parliament that it occur. In this case, that's different. When we know that when the War Measures Act was replaced with the Emergencies Act, the parliamentarians of the day wanted an additional check and balance. So they added this provision that expressly directs the ruling government that invoked it to appoint a commissioner within a set number of days, and for that commissioner to hold a public inquiry. And it expressly directs what the commissioner shall do. It doesn't say he can do whatever he wants. It doesn't say the Prime Minister's office can ask him to do whatever they think he should do. It expressly directs in section 63 sub 2 that report shall be laid before the parliaments within 360 days of the revocation. Okay, so that works out to February 18th, or the 20th rather, because 18th is a Saturday. So you bump it over to the Monday because of the Interpretation Act. So what they're going to do, in contravention of the direction from Parliament, is they've announced that they're going to give the report secretly to the Prime Minister's office and the cabinet. So they'll have it 2 weeks on February 6th or 9th. I'm drawing a confusion on that date. It's one of those two. I think it's the 6th. So they'll have it, and then the parliamentarians in the Parliament won't receive it, and we won't see it until the 20th. This is not cool.
That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.